Monday night, and you know what that means. The Jersey First Television Network proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And certainly I am the generational talent in Garden State Media and your leader for trustworthy opinion journalism. That's right, folks. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Happy President's Day. Hope you got to enjoy the day off for a lot of you, whether you work in education, whether you work in the public and private sector. Hope you got to enjoy the long weekend. And of course, you got to enjoy Valentine's Day weekend with all your sweethearts. Of course, I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be tuning in here right now, folks, on this, the 16th of February in 2026. And again, I want to thank you for making this a part of your Monday night viewing here on all of your platforms and devices. Always remember, folks, if you haven't done so already, make sure you like Real Talk and Jersey First on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and X, and certainly subscribe to us on YouTube. And whether you get your podcasts on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First. You can listen to episodes anywhere at any time, whether you're walking your dog, as it's getting a little bit warmer now, folks, since these single-digit days earlier in the month. And of course, maybe you're doing some food shopping. Maybe you're getting those leftover chocolates on sale after Valentine's Day. I mean, listen, there's a lot of good sales out there. But in any event, I'm sure you have your smartphone or tablet with you. Again, check out Jersey First anywhere at any time. And I can't say it enough, folks, what a privilege it is to be leading the way here via Jersey First TV. Of course, always educating and advocating for the residents in the great state here in New Jersey. Folks, brand new episodes of Real Talk premiere live every Monday night. Check your local listings, of course, for start times here on the Jersey First Television Network. Folks, you want to stick around for final thoughts? I'm going to have a lot to say about some of the usual malcontents, as you know, in New Jersey media. But again, as a reminder, happy President's Day to all of you. Well, maybe to some of you. Not everyone gets to enjoy President's Day today like others. But in any event, folks, as I say it all the time, again, there's plenty of malcontents in New Jersey media, in activism, in higher education, government officials, electeds, you know it. And of course, it's always interesting to talk about polarizing issues. And, last week I was able to talk about my op-ed that I submitted to the award-winning Jersey City Times. And a shout out to Aaron Morrill, the editor-in-chief at the Jersey City Times. And quite frankly, folks, it was the most measured and composed op-ed you would ever see from me. And it still wasn't enough by many on the left than the local progressives in Hudson County, New Jersey, who wasted no time in vilifying yours truly. I'll tell you why. As usual, they're full of it. And I'll give a shout out as well, folks, to the Hudson County Chronicles for their response to the response of my op-ed last week. And you'll definitely want to hear what the editor, Bruce Alston, had to say about all the hoopla concerning my op-ed about ICE in Hudson County and more, of course. Folks, stick around for final thoughts. You don't want to miss out on that. And during a special comment, ladies and gentlemen, yes, I like to sort of browse the news feeds for some of the more insufferable people in New Jersey media or activism. When I think about insufferable and I think about just downright annoying, well, folks, let's be honest. We think about Jay Lassiter from Insider NJ, and his latest tweet just kind of reminds you of how politically tone-deaf he is. But what else is new with Jay Lassiter? Yeah, I know that's Jay. Trust me, folks. I know you may not recognize him. He has something in his mouth there. But then again, when doesn't he have something in his mouth? Well, that's probably a topic for a different day. Definitely check out special comment later in the broadcast. Folks, again, it's a Monday night here. Like, comment, and share if you don't mind. Again, it helps the show grow and show your support for fearless, independent journalism, which is right here on Real Talk every Monday night via the Jersey First Television Network. Folks, it's election season. It's also, time to talk about the importance of higher education today in New Jersey. And why not talk to one of the leaders in academia here in the Garden State? He is the distinguished director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. It's a pretty nice university, beautiful campus down in central Jersey. Is it central or south? I'm not sure, but he'll tell us. He is Micah Rasmussen, joins us live right now on Real Talk. Mike, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you, Fernando?
Good to see you, brother. And again, there's always that argument. Is it central? Is it south? What's going on?
I think we're as central as it gets. When you're hugging 295 and 195, we're the most centrally located university. Let's put it that way. We're the closest to Trenton. So if Trenton is central, then we're central. And that's the way we like it. We're easy to get to, as you know. Loved having you down last year for the debates. We were very glad to play that part in keeping voters educated in the state, and look forward to doing it again, always doing it, making sure there's always an election in New Jersey. So always a lot to get voters up to speed on.
There's no off season, to sort of use that sports analogy. There's no off season to sort of, recharge your batteries. No, it's maybe the League of Municipalities and maybe Christmas, and that's it. So it's January 1st. It's up and running. But before we get to this election cycle, though, Mike, and I definitely want to get your thoughts about what happened last November. But for our audience maybe is tuning in tonight and isn't familiar with the great work that you and all your students do at the Rebovich Institute, take us through exactly the origins of the Rebovich Institute and, quite frankly, why it's still so relevant today, not just at Rider, but really in the discussion within academic circles about the work it does.
Well, I appreciate your letting me do that, because Dr. Rebovich meant an awful lot to me. He was my professor as an undergrad, and he was the go-to guy in New Jersey politics for many, many years. I was a student in the 80s and 90s. He was the go-to resource then. And there was not an institute then, but he was the guy everybody came to. Part of that is because not a lot of people focus exclusively on New Jersey the way he did. And when he died, Rider decided they wanted to continue his legacy. So they started this institute and named it for him. And my predecessor, Ben Dworkin, ran it for 10 years. And then when he moved to another university, I was doing other things. I had worked in government. I had worked in the corporate sector. And the chance to come back and to do for students what he did for me set me up in my first internship, which is what I do for students. I use my connections in the field of New Jersey politics to connect, whether it's people who want to work in students who want to work in legislative offices, or they want to work on campaigns, they want to work for a lobbying firm. We're going to get them that experience, hopefully maybe even all three, so that by the time they come out after 4 years, they are professionals in the field. They are known in their field. They are respected for the work that they do, and people know them and their reputation precedes them. So that's the kind of hands-on experiential learning that we do. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, we bring the state's biggest debates to campus. We put them on. We had 1,700 people in our gym last year when Jack Ciattarelli and Mikey Sherrill debated. So we're really, really happy to help educate New Jersey and New Jersey voters on our elections, on our politics, which are really special. And we're happy to give our students that front row seat and voters that front row seat.
Great job again at the Rebovich Institute, Mike. And folks, again, if you're interested in more information about the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey politics, please visit rider.edu, and certainly there on the menu you can look up all the great information there, as well as all the other great academic programs at Rider University. And of course, their director at the Rebovich Institute joins me live right now here on Real Talk. Folks, like, comment, and share. It helps the show grow and really helps show your support for fearless independent journalism here, courtesy of Real Talk. So, Micah, again, great stuff that you're doing there at Rider. What are some big events coming up this spring semester, maybe even going into the summer?
Well, you're gonna like this. We last week we had Jay Weber come in, very conservative state lawmaker. We like to hear from all sides of the ideological spectrum. The next guy we're going to hear from is Senator Brian Stack. He's going to be coming down and talking about how he manages to get out the vote, how he managed to crank it out, and we're really excited about. I'm really excited that he said he would do it. I don't have a date for you yet, but I'll let you know when we do. And then we will probably do something with this 12th. Congressional district, the 17 candidates who are running, try to help voters make sense out of that, because that's really close to home for us.
I mean, it seems like a WWE Royal Rumble with that many people in one match almost in CD12. And we'll get to that in a little bit, but happy to hear my state senator, Brian Stack, who, let's be honest, I mean, when it comes to the GOTV efforts every election cycle, I mean, nobody really does it better than my mayor and state senator. And this is a guy who, and it's interesting, though, Micah, because I think in a time when we look at legislators in Trenton who are very self-serving, and, I'll throw some names out there of people I don't really like State Senator Scutari, the Senate President, and others, you can't say that about Stack. I mean, this is a guy who, his constituent services is, I would argue, the best in the state. I mean, he has seen hundreds of people a day in his office. I can tell you because I go see him once a week, and I talk to him. I wouldn't say I'm in Stack's inner circle, but I mean, the mayor and I talk weekly on his other cell phone, not the one he gives out to everybody, but the other cell phone. And I'm fortunate. He'll answer my text within relatively a few minutes when I text him, and he's great to talk to. He's a fellow Cowboys fan, so we always have that going on for each other. But the bottom line is, he's really set the standard for the get out the vote mechanism that I think a lot of electeds and even some candidates are starting to emulate, because they understand without a county line, going door to door, getting the ground game out. And listen, that's what worked in CD11, obviously during the special election. More on that in a minute. But
Yeah.
when we think about the GOTV efforts, I mean, obviously, I think Stack has set the blueprint for it, but it's hard to duplicate.
It is. This is an area where good politics is also good government, because what he knows, and my students and I were just talking about this today, politicians can live in a bubble if they don't talk to people every day. This is why, talking to you every week, talking to the people that he talks to every week, and getting out those voters every week, staying in contact with them, helping them when they need help, giving out turkeys at Thanksgiving. He is staying in touch with people so that he knows how the policies and the decisions that he's making are affecting them. And you really need to do that. You don't want to be in your bubble. You want to hear all views. And this is a situation where good politics definitely leads to better decisions. It leads to better policies and better government.
Absolutely. So, let me know when he's going down there, because I'm sure I will. Be like, I definitely would want to take a trip down there back to Rider and see that in person. I mean, he's a great speaker. I mean, obviously, when you see him at rallies and you see him cutting great videos on his Twitter and his Instagram pages about constituent services, it's not about the turkeys during Thanksgiving, folks. It's not about
that. It's just, that's all part of it, right? It's not you're absolutely right. I mean, there are other candidates who get in trouble for that stuff. That stuff was controversial when McGreevey did it during the mayoral election in Jersey City. It looked like he was trying to sort of buy support, or that was how it was perceived by his opponents. But with Stack, it's part of building that relationship with as many people. Look, when government works right, people should know who to pick up the phone. They should know who to call. They should know who to keep in touch with. There's nothing shameful about that. That's the way it ought to be. And so he's doing it right, as far as I'm concerned.
No, certainly. And again, he's a guy that's consistently out there. And unlike some other elected officials in Hudson County, the state assembly, LD 32, who just go out for, photo ops. I mean, Stack is doing it daily. So I appreciate his efforts, and it shows with the turnout that he gets. And obviously he's running for re-election this May. I highly doubt he'll have an opponent, but he'll work the doors, and he'll make sure that he mobilizes people, register new voters, and certainly gets the community engaged when it comes to not just this election cycle, but certainly during primaries, whether it's for legislative races, gubernatorial races. You saw that last November, which leads me to my next topic here. And
let me just say one more thing about that, Fernando. He keeps himself and voters in the practice of voting. He doesn't, like you said, he doesn't just show up once a year when he needs to vote.
Correct.
He keeps people in the practice of it so that it's a habit, right? He keeps people in a habit. And I really think we see a lot of places in the state where turnout is not what it should be. In a lot of the cities, it's not what it should be. But that's not the case with him, because it's something he works at every single day. And he wants you, the voters, to be working at it too.
Yeah, and not just during a mayoral election, for example, but legislative races. Just like last year in his legislative district, his two assembly candidates obviously getting through a very nasty and fickle primary with no county line now. Obviously, I mean, these elections become a lot more contested.
No gatekeeper. There's no screening. It's just everybody can run who wants to run. Yeah,
so absolutely. Yeah. Now, it's interesting. I'm not sure if you saw my episode with David Wallstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe, last year, maybe a couple of weeks after, the runoffs in Jersey City and in Hoboken. But Micah, it seems like yesterday. I was literally, it's February. I was on campus at Rider University meeting you for the first time. And it was a contested primary season, not just for the Democrat Party, but for Republicans as well last year. And, after the primary came and went, it was relatively very blah summer. And then right after Labor Day, things picked up, right? Obviously, within a couple of weeks, you saw a couple of debates. We saw the first debate at Rider University, where I thought Jack Chiarelli did exceedingly better than his Democrat challenger, Mikey Sherrill. And then even in the second one. But the optics of like a government shutdown, the optics or the rhetoric of SNAP benefits being denied to people, the Gateway Tunnel, which, by the way, folks, I mean, it's not going to be completed until 2035, so let's calm down too. But the bottom line is it seemed like that's all it took for Democrats in two gubernatorial elections to really stick it to the president and Republicans. And so much so, Micah, here in New Jersey, it wasn't just so much, every poll, which, it's kind of hard to trust these days, had this race very tight. That wasn't the case. Mikey Sherrill won convincingly by double digits. And so much so that she was able to, along with her coattails, flip, I believe, 7 to 8 assembly seats. So it's bad enough how bad Republicans had it in the assembly. Their deficit is even worse now
Mm-hmm.
And listen, and to be fair, Micah, she ran on a few things, freezing energy costs, whatever, and everything else, affordability, and sticking it to Trump. And that's great, Micah. But at the end of the day, sticking it to Trump isn't going to pay your property taxes, isn't going to pay your electrical bills. And it seems like in New Jersey, they're still struggling in that. It's only a few weeks in, I get it. But it seems like Mikey Sherrill, the governor, is now very much about, well, we just want to be emphatic as Democrats. But going into last November, there was a chance Republicans could have flipped that seat, and but that wasn't the case. And we saw Jack Ciattarelli's political career die. And as I told David, I'll say this to you, based on the voter registration advantages Democrats have, the way that Democrats just message better or fearmonger, in my opinion, I don't think I'll ever see a Republican in my adult life become governor of New Jersey. I just don't see that.
So here's the way it could happen, and it could happen for Governor Sherrill in 4 short years. Affordability is a tough taskmaster, and you only have to look back at how President Trump was riding high on affordability in 2024 when he got elected, largely on that issue, and grocery prices and everything else, to see how quickly people run out of patience, right? Even if there's a perception that he is making headway on gas prices or whatever it happens to be, consumer sentiment is down, right? Inflation is up, not by as much as it was, but it's still going up, right? Let's face it, right? It's gravity. And so where he was just, 2 short years ago, a year and a half ago, is light years from where he is today. The same thing can happen to her, right? If she doesn't deliver. And it's a tough one to deliver on because it's very much in the eyes of the consumer. Okay, well, you held down, there hasn't been an electricity rate case, right? There's been a freeze on the rate cases. Okay, that's great. But how about the cost of buying the electricity itself? Not just the rate case, but actually buying the electricity on the market is driving up rates for people, driving up costs for people above and beyond the rates themselves. And so there's a lot that can go wrong for her. And if it does, and people run out of patience the way that they have to some extent with Trump and really took it out on Trump's party in this last election, then I think you can see a different case going into her reelection race. Maybe you're right. Maybe she'll be okay anyway. But I think it could be a much more competitive situation in her reelection in 2029 if she has not shown real results on those promises she made.
I mean, Micah, you're right. But again, at the end of the day, and I hate using this sort of blanket statement or term out there for about, the presence of low information voters out there, because there are in every state. I get it, Micah. But my God, I mean, you're a property owner. I am as well. I mean, I look at the gas tax. And again, that started under Christie, in fairness. But, obviously under Steve Sweeney and then another assembly speaker. But, whether it's our property taxes, which are the highest in the country, the gas tax went up again, tolls went up again. Micah, it's not Republicans that are making the state unaffordable. It's one party. And I hate to say it. I mean, we're becoming California. We're becoming a one-party state where, Democrats rule with an iron fist. And then the audacity by either some electeds or journalists or activists to say, well, Trump and Republicans in Washington. But Micah, at the end of the day, the president doesn't control property taxes. The president has to do with the budget getting bigger and bigger and bigger every cycle, or tolls going up, or the gas tax, Micah. I think it's so politically myopic that people keep falling for the same bullshit. And again, it's like, okay, you're right. In 4 years, we'll see what happens in terms of body of work for Governor Sherrill. But all it takes is, again, Donald Trump won't be in office in 2029. We'll see which president will be there. I mean, for me, hopefully it's J.D. Vance, but we'll see. But the bottom line is that the scare tactics at some point has to expire. Where, again, we're becoming California, Mike. I mean, it's hard to argue that based on the iron fist rule here when it comes to the budget and spending, it's hard to argue that, man.
Well, so one thing I've been really encouraged by is that she and her treasurer have said, we are not raising taxes this year. Now, we'll see if that's where things land or not. Sure. But they're boxing themselves in, right? They're not giving themselves a lot of wiggle room. They're telegraphing that that's where their budget's
even the sales tax? I mean, remember the sales tax? That was a big thing, remember last year, right?
I know, and it didn't go up, right? So my point is that it's certainly possible that we could still see tax increases. However, if she was of a mind that that's where things were going, it would be foolish now to be saying we're not going to do it. I think she's sort of giving us a glimpse that that's where this first budget may be going. And if this first budget of hers is going, putting the lid on things, which is not how Phil Murphy governed, right? He, sort of governed from a very progressive point of view, increased the budget every year, paid for the priorities, the liberal progressive priorities that he was coming up with. It seems like she may be coming at it from a different direction. We'll know a lot more in a couple of weeks when she introduces that budget, but it seems like she's going to try to do things. She recognizes that we've been through a big dramatic increase in the state budget, and it seems like she maybe wants to do things differently.
No, absolutely. And certainly, again, she'll be submitting a new budget, I think, at the end of the month, right? Or early March, I think. When the legislature convenes. So we'll see it. You're absolutely right on that. Folks, again, like, comment, and share tonight's episode right now. Is joining me here live is the director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. The great Micah Rasmussen joins us live here on Real Talk. Micah, let's talk about election 2026. And just a couple weeks ago, the seat that was vacated by Governor Sherrill in the 11th Congressional District had a lot of very different type of Democrats. Some establishment names like Brendan Gill, Tom Malinowski, certainly the Lieutenant Governor, Tanisha Way, and certainly very far left progressive firebrand and activist Ana Lilia Mejia, who got into that race a little bit later. And sure enough, on election night, just a couple weeks ago, on a Thursday, right? No less than a Thursday.
Right.
Obviously,
February, when nobody's used to voting.
It took a few days to establish a winner, but it seemed, well, obviously she was, Tom Malinowski conceded that race. And Olivia Mejia will be the nominee for the Democrat Party in the 11th Congressional District for the special primary election in April. She'll be opposed by Randolph, New Jersey Mayor Joe Hathaway, who, folks, by the way, mark on your calendars. He'll be on Monday, March the 23rd, coming up. So looking forward to having him on, as well as also Olivia on the program in the next few weeks. But interesting, no county line. She literally got into this race because remember, like mail-in ballots went out just a couple of days before Christmas.
Yeah.
It last, a couple months ago. And, she hit the ground game, no county line again. And you want to talk about get out the vote. Yes, she got a lot of progressive endorsements. Obviously, she had Bernie Sanders come to New Jersey. She had Representative Ocasio-Cortez come to New Jersey, like really far left progressives, even Democrat socialists. And there's no way to say it, who came in here and got her across the finish line against a lot of mainstream Democrats. What happened there in CD11? It seemed like someone like Malinowski and even Brendan Gill looked like they were going to battle it out in that special primary, but that's not the case. And Olivia Mejia is the nominee for the Democrat Party. I mean, what happened there?
Well, a couple things. One, having all those candidates in the field and having those establishment candidates splinter their vote really allowed somebody with 30%. Mejia had 30% of the vote that she won this primary with. It allowed her to drill down, turn out every progressive voter anywhere in the district that she could find. It wasn't just, Essex County. It wasn't just Morris County. She was not targeting her get out the vote that we're talking about here was not targeting by geography. It was targeting by ideology. And she was working some good lists. And she got people fired up in that wing of the party. And it was enough when the other wings of the party were all carved up. I don't know if you would have seen the same result if it was a head-to-head, if it was just her versus one of the establishment candidates. I don't know if it would have been the same result. However, this is something that both parties are going to have to reconcile themselves with, is that when the parties lose the ability to screen and you're getting, a dozen candidates or more, you can carve up that vote and you can allow somebody who's super organized and who is mobilizing their base, have a good shot at winning primary elections, because primary elections are lower turnout, highly committed voters can have a big impact on that race. The question is, what does that translate into now that she's the nominee for the general election? And I think it gives Hathaway potentially the chance to make his case. I don't know that he's going to ever be the favorite in this district, in this climate in 2026, but he gets to make his case that he's the more moderate candidate.
No, certainly. And what's interesting, and I talked about this again in December when I had David on, and said, listen, there's very likely a possibility that we're going to see a very crowded field. And if that race is tight and whoever comes in like a close second, yes, might still want a primary, whoever wins the special election going into June. And sure enough, I call that. Now, again, that hasn't happened yet. We'll see what happens in April. Again, because the final deadline and that special election date are kind of around the same time. So it'll be interesting. Yep. Sure, it'll be close. But I mean, you have to make the case perhaps for maybe someone like former Lieutenant Governor Tanisha Way, who, got a lot of, got some good support, came in close, so did Malinowski. I mean, there's a chance that, again, listen, it's a tough district. It's a lot of the stroller moms, Micah. It's all those progressive Karens in Montclair and everywhere else. So there's a chance that Lilia is going to really resonate with that crowd. Having said that, I give Joe a puncher's chance, as they say in boxing terms, because, he's not too conservative. He's pretty moderate. He's got a good record as a mayor overseeing a town in Randolph and Morris County. And certainly I think he can, listen, no one's expecting Joe to win this outright, but I think if he can make it interesting and competitive, it gives him the rest of the spring, summer going into the fall, because I'm sure that he'll run again in the primary. I don't think anyone's going to challenge him. No one challenged him now. No one's going to challenge him in that primary. So he'll be the candidate should he lose in April going into November. But again, he'll have some weeks to hopefully, raise some money. I mean, we'll see if the NJGOP can be somewhat competent here and raise some money, or the national GOP can help him raise some money. But we'll see what the turnout will be in April for her and him going into that special election, because, yes, she's going to resonate with that voter base. And as you mentioned, low turnout, it's a special election in April. People are thinking about other things, whatever, Easter, whatever else. And that might not be the biggest turnout race. We'll see. But it's also interesting, I think, though, Micah, that it reminds us that in this post-line world, that it really allows for both Republican candidates and Democrat candidates to say, you know what? If we knock on doors, if we have an apparatus in place, we can get turnout.
That's it. And the party loses the ability to screen that out. They lose the ability to sort of, get us from a dozen candidates where anything can happen down to a couple of candidates, right? And so that's really where we're in this very wild card situation. And the thing is that I've said before the end of the line that it really allowed the parties to moderate. It allowed the parties to bring us back to the middle. We've lost that now. The parties don't have the ability to do that. Anything can happen at this point. And so really what I'm going to be watching, if you want to talk about, Hathaway's chances come November, is what does Mejia's voting record look like between now and then? Once she goes to Washington, does she have a mainstream voting record, or does she have the voting record that is out of the mainstream with this district? And that's what we're going to find out. And I think at this point, I've been really surprised at how much the party and elected officials in that district have coalesced around her as quickly as they have, because you might expect somebody to say exactly what you're saying. I'm going to take her on in June. It'll be a one-on-one race. We're going to see what happens. I think I've got a good shot. I think maybe the reason why they haven't is because IPAC played a huge role in this race. They spent a couple $1 million. The American-Israeli PAC spent a couple $1 million trying to drive up Tom Malinowski's negatives in this race. It worked. And I think that what Democrats maybe realize is that the same thing could happen to Mejia in June if they have a contest, if they do have a race, that's going to happen. And they don't necessarily want to see her torn down. They know that this is the progressives' favorite at this point. They don't want to see her just taken out summarily. They think that she's earned the chance now to go down to Washington and prove herself one way or the other. And at this point, if she does have a more progressive record than the district, then they can deal with that at that point in time.
Absolutely.
So see what happens.
Absolutely. And speaking about her voting record, one of the things about her platform, and folks, if you're just joining us live, again, like, comment, and share tonight's episode, folks, as my guest tonight is the director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. My good friend, the guy, I'm trying to grow that beard out as nice as Micah is, folks. Micah Rasmussen here joins us live on the show here. Again, like, comment, and share. Appreciate it, folks. Micah, for our audience, and one of the things that really got her over, I think, the finish line, especially in that district for a lot of progressives, was this sort of catchphrase that her and many progressives are sort of writing on. And, I haven't done this in a few years since I haven't been working in academia and teaching in higher education, but I remember teaching U.S. government, and I remember teaching U.S. history and American government, Micah. And I think it's important for our audience to understand the premise of ICE as an agency. And again, for our audience at home, maybe you don't have Google nearby, but I look at my notes from my lectures. And again, DHS is overseen by the executive branch. And again, as a cabinet level department created in 2003, it operates under the direction of the President of the United States and the Secretary of Homeland Security, which leads the department. Now, again, key details regarding the oversight of DHS includes executive branch control. It is one of 15 executive departments established under the Homeland Security Act of 2002. Certainly, the Secretary of Homeland Security is a member of the President's cabinet. The department oversees 22 agencies, which includes the TSA, CBP, and FEMA. And of course, the department, the purpose is designed to secure the nation from threats, including terrorism, border issues, and cybersecurity. So again, that's the importance of understanding ICE and the agency that oversees it. Micah, what drives me crazy by people like progressives and the far left, and again, I talked about this during an op-ed I submitted last week to the Jersey Times. I'm hoping that we learn from the nonsense of 6 years ago when it was all the defund the police bullshit. Mm-hmm. And it seems like, well, it's catchy for clicks on TikTok and Instagram and hashtags and T-shirts and signs, but abolishing ICE is not realistic. That's number one. And number two, listen, I'm a conservative, but I can also call balls and strikes fairly, Micah. Do we need more than 47 weeks of training? Absolutely, no question. Someone who's worked in criminal justice for over 10 years, I can tell you from firsthand experience, we need more than 47 weeks. Mm-hmm. We need body cams on ICE officers. Absolutely, certainly, no question from me. Now, do we need one demographic of people being deputized and radicalized by far left progressives to deputize people to think it's okay to stand in front of a van entering Delaney Hall and other things? No, this is ridiculous. So abolishing ICE isn't realistic. But I always tell people, okay, well, what's the alternative? And what I would argue is some simple things I just recommended, I think should suffice, but that isn't good enough for progressives, Micah. What say you?
Well, so I think what you're going to see, the conditions that the Senate Democrats are looking for in Washington right now are a lot more like what you're talking about. More training, more cameras, get rid of the face coverings, which, again, we can agree or disagree on. But I think those are the reforms that they're looking for. I think many reasonable people understand and agree that we have to have enforcement of immigration. We have to have an ability to get rid of what President Trump talked about when he campaigned, which was the criminals, right? The people who would do us harm. I think the problem has been that that's not exactly what we've seen in translation, right? And so Get us back to that core mission, or maybe you have seen it, whatever your opinion is, but focus us on that core mission of keeping us safe, right? Get away from the stuff where it's about quotas and about, the numbers, or about, the ugliest arrest you can make, or whatever it is that Stephen Miller cooks up in his head, right? Get us back to the reasonable job that we can all agree on has to be done. Does that mean that there's going to be, unanimity on all sides of the spectrum? No, of course not. You're right. Mejia has called for abolishing ICE. She was the only candidate to do that. I still don't think that that's the mainstream view of Democrats. As you say, it's sort of the far left view at this point. It's not necessarily where most New Jerseyans are. It's not necessarily where most Americans are. I think we can probably agree on ways to make enforcement better. And I think that's probably where the debate ought to be.
Absolutely. And again, we'll see should she win in April during the special election. As you mentioned, she'll be going to Washington. She's going to have a voting record. She's going to be there with other progressive members of the House voting on DHS funding, what to do, whether to have congressional hearings when it comes to Kristi Noem, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, or, dragging other government agents in. And listen, and by the way, I can be fair about this, Micah. I think we need better messengers when it comes to this. I'm not the biggest Stephen Miller fan. I think when it comes to this stuff, I think you need better messengers because, again, and I hate to get into the tit for tat argument or the apples and oranges argument. Unfortunately, let me phrase it. Fortunately, yes, we all have a camera on our phones. We can go at any time. And certainly from the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, right back in 2002, obviously after Muslim extremists, knocked down Twin Towers and the Pentagon and everything else, obviously we saw that. And we saw the creation of ICE consolidating into a new agency in 2003. We've had multiple presidents, both Republicans and Democrats alike, deport millions and millions of people. Now, did we see as much exposure on it? Was there the outrage in not just the establishment media, but academia, activism, as we've seen in the last 10 years? Of course not, right? So, I mean, we have to sort of be realistic about how the optics have changed about how to look at ICE. Are there people in cages? Are there people sleeping all in, under electric blankets? Sure, we saw that in 2014 under Barack Obama. Yes, we want to vilify the current administration. I get all that, Micah. But the problem is, it just seems like there's this narrative out there about hijacking border security and immigration. And again, it just seems like it's infuriating for a lot of us when we're seeing polls out there. And again, polling is suspect, Micah, where, a majority of Americans still support what ICE is doing to keep our community safe.
Absolutely. We need to do what we can through the training, through the cameras, through the tools to avoid the tragedies that we've seen, which are unacceptable. We can agree on that, all sides of the political spectrum. We need to make sure we create an environment. And part of that is the tone. Part of that is the message, right? If we have a message that we're going to treat people professionally and with respect, and we've got to do our work, but we're going to do it, and we're not going to, shoot at people, we're not going to be out to take over cities, right? It's the rhetoric really matters here. The tone really matters here. We need to get back to focusing on keeping people safe from those who would do us harm. And that was supported in the election. That would be supported today. I think we've gotten away from that because of some of these abuses that we need to dig in, root out, and get us back to supporting the job that's got to be done.
Yeah, and again, and I can call balls and strikes Philly on this show. I mean, 47 days is not enough. I mean, that's spring training.
Right.
That's literally spring training. Like, that's literally when managers sit there and look at the pitching staff and look at the lineup and say, okay, what 25 guys am I going to throw out there on opening day? Yeah. Like, that's not enough. And again, that's not me being anti-ICE or anti-law enforcement. We need more extensive training. Micah, this is a tough job. I mean, we're seeing ICE agents go into some absolute shitholes in this country and get some dangerous people out, and apprehend them. This isn't 47 days. Again, it's not enough. And I think when you are talking about, whether it's the signing bonus as attractive or whatever else, we need more training. But again, that's up to Congress to recommend this, and subsequently the executive branch will enact it. It's not like, abolish ICE. Okay, well, guess what? You're literally going to have to rewrite the Department of Homeland Security's charter. And it's not realistic that Congress is going to do that. They can't even decide when to fund a budget, for God's sakes.
No, and this is where we really do have to learn when to walk away from the rhetoric on all sides. Yeah. And the process that's going on in Washington right now, where, the president says, yeah, I recognize that there need to be reforms. And, what is it that the Senate Democrats need? And the Senate Democrats say, here's what we need, right? And they've got to hammer it out. They've got to go behind closed doors, whatever it's going to be, and they've got to do it, right? They've got to do it. And if they can't agree, that's where we get to the shutdown. That's where we get to not funding things, right? The whole thing. But it's not going to be with overheated rhetoric that we're going to solve this. It's going to be by, sitting down face to face and hammering this out. I think most of us, most reasonable people could agree, just talking, certainly among us as friends, on what needs to be done.
Absolutely. Now, moving nearby in CD9, we have an interesting race coming up here. Obviously, we have some Republicans that have declared. Back in 2024, Billy Prempeh came within about a point and a half, almost 2 points, of unseating Nellie Poe, who subsequently had filled in that seat for the late Bill Pascrell, who had been there for decades. And, the national GOP and even the NJGOP, I think, had they made even more of an effort, even so much as $1 million, I mean, I think Billy Prempeh could have won that race.
Yep.
He's chosen not to run again. It seems like the leading name right now is attorney and women's rights activist Tiffany Burris. And again, if you're not sure why that name should sound familiar to New Jerseyans, she's the wife of Super Bowl champion Plaxico Burris from the New York Giants. Certainly hitting the ground running. She could be a competitive primary in that congressional district. Again, running as a moderate, pretty much like Joe Hathaway, not super conservative, not really, embracing the president. But, I'm sure congressional Democrats will try to, paint her as a MAGA cultist or whatever. But the bottom line is I think someone like Tiffany Burris could make it uncomfortable for Nellie Poe in that district. Certainly, again, there are some things that are coming out now about Tiffany Burris, whether it's a potential bankruptcy or anything else. Whether or not that led to the conversation about better vetting of candidates, that's a topic for another day. But don't think Nellie Poe's going to have a cakewalk here. I think she's going to have to raise some money and work like she did 2 years ago. I don't think it's a cakewalk for Nellie Poe in the 9th Congressional District, Micah.
No, I agree with you that she can no longer take it for granted. And even if the only reason she can't take it for granted is because this is a district that is now on the national Republicans' radar screen. And the reason it's on their radar screen is because President Trump won the district and it's represented by a Democrat. And so, those districts that meet those conditions automatically go to the top of the list. And so this race is now on the radar screen of the Republican Party. It's a target for the Republican Party. But I think the trouble that Prempa fell into is that to get Washington money, you sort of have to be able to raise money on your own. And maybe that's not the right answer. It certainly wasn't in this district because it was a district where something could have happened, right? But that's the way that the conventional wisdom works and everything else, right? So he wasn't able to raise the money to be able to attract the Washington money. We'll see if the situation is different with Burris. We'll see if she can raise money on her own. One other difference, though, that I should mention here between now and 2 years ago is I think a lot of what was happening in 2024 was a lot of Trump voters who come out in that presidential election. We don't know if they're going to come out in a non-presidential election.
Yeah.
Trump isn't on the ballot. So we don't know if she's going to have the same hard time that she had 2 years ago. We certainly know that the vote last year, 2025, for governor was much different in New Jersey than it was in his 5-point race, President Trump's 5-point race here in 2024. So if we are looking more like 2024, yeah, get ready to go. But if you're looking more like 2025, where it was back to that 14, 15-point range, and a lot of those Trump voters are not coming out because he's not on the ballot, then she may not have the hard time that we think that she might have.
No, you're right, Mike. And again, I think it gets back to messaging where Democrats, swung and hit out of the park last year with just the basic messaging. Trump is bad. This isn't going to get done. This isn't going to get funded. Trump is evil. And I get all that. Listen, you can dislike the president all you want. That's fine. But I, at some point, I think that has a shelf life where, you're right, Republicans have to get out and vote. And if they're not motivated because Trump's not on the ballot, that's a sad state of affairs, I think, for Republicans in New Jersey. And you saw that last year, and even, we'll see what happens this year during these midterms. But certainly I think Burris can raise some money. And listen, don't be surprised. All it's going to take is, she's at home having dinner with her husband and be like, hey, babe, some of your teammates, and, why don't you reach out to them and talk to their wives? And I'm sure some have some deep pockets. And why don't you reach out to a couple of Super Bowl teammates on the Giants or whoever? And sure enough, maybe that could raise some money. But at the end of the day, you're right. I think it's about whether or not her message can resonate, especially if Republican voters can get out there and vote in a district that, Trump won. But at the same time last year, Republicans weren't as enthusiastic. We'll see where the enthusiasm is in the 9th Congressional District. Right here by where I live in the 8th Congressional District, obviously, Rob Menendez has won a couple of races already, Micah. Listen, again, and some progressives, I think, in Jersey City and Hudson County in general, keep trying to equate him with his dad. Like, that's nonsense. Like, he's won 2 races on his own. He beat a really bad candidate in 2024, former Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala. And now he's up against, Musab Ali, former Board of Ed president in Jersey City, a guy who ran for mayor, a guy who's, very progressive, abolish ICE, stop funding to Israel, et cetera, very far left progressive views. But right now, U.S. Senator, the junior Senator Andy Kim has endorsed Rob Menendez. It's fair to say when he was arrested in front of Delaney Hall, that Newark mayor, which Newark is part of the 8th Congressional District, I'm pretty sure Ross Baraka will endorse Rob Menendez at some point.
Yeah,
I don't think it's a race that Musab Ali can win, but he's trying to paint himself like he's the progressive and Rob isn't. Rob, listen, I know Rob Menendez personally. We're friends. We can text. I don't agree with a lot of his views, but I wouldn't call him a far left progressive. He's kind of amped it up a little bit with some F-bombs about ICE and all that, but he's still a pretty moderate Democrat as far as his voting record's concerned.
Yeah, I think that he has passed that bar and met that challenge of differentiating himself from his dad. I think it's going to be a little late to try and paint him with that brush. I agree with you on that. I think he has really put a lot of the vulnerability, the potential vulnerability, behind him. It doesn't mean that he still can't get a strong challenge, but if you can't, the reality in American politics, if you can't get a new office holder in their first shot or their second shot, you might not be able to get them. You know, they've got a chance to establish themselves. All the good things that we talked about that Brian Stack does, constituent service, you know, really establishing yourself. By the time you win your first 1 or 2 elections, you've got that down if you're doing it right, and I know Menendez is. And you sort of have put a lot of that behind you, and maybe they're not going to be able to catch you at that point. A lot of it comes down to time advantage. You've had the chance to raise money, put money in the bank. Now your opponent has to catch up. They're going to be entering the race. They've got just a few months, and you've already got this head start. They may not even ever be able to catch you.
Absolutely. And again, if he doesn't listen, he already lost an endorsement from Andy Kim. He's probably not going to get one from Ross Baraka. Very likely, from what I'm hearing, the new mayor in Jersey, James Solomon, who's got a lot of his own problems to deal with when it comes to budgetary issues, I don't think is going to want to get involved in this race. He might just sit it out. I mean, and I think there's this idea by Ali voters or supporters in Jersey City that, because he's a progressive and James Solomon won Jersey City decisively, that's not true. He's going to have to override the stack, get out the vote mechanism in North Hudson, down in Newark, down in parts of Elizabeth. That's not going to be easy. And again, I may disagree with a lot of Rob's positions, but the one thing I've said it consistently on this show, when I've had him on, I've said it to his face. You've rolled up your sleeves. You've gotten to work. Constituent services is as good as anybody that I know in the House of Representatives. You call his office, whether it's an issue with your passport, whether it's an issue about you have a family member, maybe that's here illegally, facing deportation, whatever, his office responds. I give him that, and I think he's responsive. I don't know if you're Musab Ali, you just lost a race, you came in fourth, go for a county commissioner race, which seems a little more tangible, but ego's a sticky thing, Micah.
We have a candidate in the Deep South, Curtis Bashaw, who really heeded that. We all say stuff like that because we see something we like. We say, you know what, start out at a reasonable level, build yourself up, right? We say, insiders say things like that. Candidates rarely do it. Curtis Bashaw ran for the U.S. Senate 2 years ago against Andy Kim, did not win that race. He's running for Cape May County Commissioner this year, and it's really very energizing for them in that county. They've got a star running, and there's no shame in sort of taking a step back and falling back and regrouping. I don't know that you're going to be able to catch Menendez and stuff. We'll see what happens. I am a believer in signs of life. It is February 16th. The primary election is less than 4 months away. I like to see, if I am looking at a challenger who's got a shot, I want to see the endorsements lined up at this point. I don't want to see what might materialize. I want to see organizations coming together. I want to see money in the bank. I want to see signs that you've got a reasonable shot at taking somebody out. And if you don't, because your opponent sure as heck does, the incumbent, then maybe it's not coming together for you. Maybe it will late. Maybe it will. Yeah. But we're not seeing it yet.
No, I agree with you. Let's move a little south into the 12th congressional district, and that looks like the Royal Rumble match in WWE. We got like 12 people there. It is it's getting a little fickle and nasty down there for sure. I know there was I believe yesterday or Saturday there was a get together by the Princeton Democrats, and that was a big ass stage.
17 of them.
It gives me anxiety just to think of having to plug in all the audio visual into that. Could you imagine? That drives me nuts, right? So tell us about
the guy who moderated that. And, we're talking about, like, if you give each candidate 2 minutes even for an opening statement, that's 34 minutes right there. How the heck do you even do stuff like that? And I love hosting debates, but that's a really, really difficult. And Charlie said he really enjoyed it. He liked the challenge. But I don't know how you give anybody a snapshot of what's going on in that race with 17 people on the stage.
No, I agree. And again, as soon as Bunny Watson Coleman announced her retirement, it's interesting when these retirements happen, though, Micah. You start seeing people come out of the woodworks, right? And you start seeing whether it's far left progressives or moderates or establishment Dems or whoever just feel like, hey, again, with no county line, that everybody's got a shot. It's almost everyone's on equal footing. And again, to sort of use this, I'm not sure if you're a comic book fan, but I'll sort of use this, whether it's the multiverse or what version of Earth we're living in. I'm not sure I'm happy being on a version of Earth, Micah, where, God help us, Sue Altman could be a member of the House of Representatives. But, I mean, we'll see. God help us. But in any event, she's got as good a shot as anybody in that district. What are you hearing right now about the pulse of where that district is leaning among Democrat voters?
Yeah, so Sue Altman's strategy is going to be very similar to what you saw with Mejia. You've got in the 11th, you've got a strong contender with Relina Reynolds Jackson, a popular Black legislator from Mercer County. And she's the favorite in Mercer County. So she's trying to solidify Dems behind her there. You've got Brad Cohen, who's the mayor of East Brunswick, who Middlesex is getting behind. And that's about 40% of the turnout in the district. So he's a contender. You've got Adrian Mapp from a much smaller part of the Union County part of the district, mayor of Plainfield, trying to get Union behind him. And you've got Chanel Robinson, a commissioner in Somerset, who's trying to get Somerset. So you've got all these establishment candidates, if this sounds familiar again, who are trying to get their county organizations behind them. But we saw how well that worked in the 11th. We saw that county organizations no longer translate into necessarily getting out their vote. Now, if they do, Middlesex is a fine Democratic organization. If they get behind it, if they crank out their votes, then Brad Cohen's got as good a chance as anybody. But if Mercer Dems are behind her, Relina Reynolds Jackson, in name, but they're not willing to back it up, if they're not willing to do the work, then that's how a progressive outsider like Sue Altman can come in and she can take a divided establishment vote and she can present a solidified progressive vote. And that's how she can, sort of run the same playbook and win the primary in June and become the nominee for the Democrats.
Yeah, certainly. And again, I think it's a district that has been solidly Democrat for decades now. Not sure if you saw my interview a couple of weeks ago. I had Hillary Hersig, who's running in the 6th congressional district. I think she's running unopposed in that primary. Very likely will be facing off against Frank Pallone, who, I mean, I like to refer to Frank as corporate Frankie because of all the corporate money he's taken over the decades. But it seems like that's another reliably blue district. Shout out to Hillary Hersig. I like her. Worked in the military. Certainly is a mom. She's trying to raise money. Again, another member of Congress that's just been there way too long, though, Micah. But it just seems like that district is kind of complacent or content with someone like Frank Pallone there representing them in Washington.
Well, this map, one of the criteria that's used in the map that I ultimately think we ought to be getting away from is continuity of representation. And the map makers really value that. It's not that they value it for Dems or for Republicans. They think the continuity is something you ought to work toward. I think competitiveness is also something you got to work toward. But it has been a district that has been drawn safe. If you look at it, it's a really oddly configured district, and it's been drawn that way because Pallone, in particular, he has a lot of environmental causes that play well at his section of the beach, but he's also got the Middlesex parts of the district that he plays to in New Brunswick and, those urban voters. And so it's a district that's really drawn for him.
Certainly. And again, it's going to be a busy election season. But because it is election season, though, Mike, obviously a big topic of conversation is certainly the SAVE Act and what's going on right now. It received the necessary votes in the House, even with one Democrat voting for it. It seems like it's going to have 50 Republican senators to pass in Washington. Obviously, it could go to the president's desk. Listen, you teach about politics, and I'm sure you have this discussion with your students. I really want to pick your brain about this. Again, voting is a fundamental right, and no one's arguing that. And I think that what bothers me is when people try to come up with the semantic arguments or the apples to oranges or whatever it is. Well, you need an ID to do A, B, and C, which is all true. That's fine. But I would argue that when it comes to the authenticity of elections, whether it's in Latin America, my dad's native country of Colombia, whether it's in my mom's native land of Spain, various countries in Europe, or throughout Latin America, the idea of A, proving citizenship, and B, making sure that you are a citizen and registered to vote, I don't think is outlandish, Micah. I think
it's got a lot of popular support, Fernando.
Sure, and when you look at polling, again, polling's always very different, but it seems like demographics across all lines, Blacks, Hispanics, college-educated women, seem to be all on board with this. Why does it seem so polarizing when one political party, again, I'll just say this outright, fear-mongers when it comes to there's no polling tax, Micah. There's no inability for Black people or for married women to not be able to register to vote or to prove citizenship. I'm tired, Micah, of this narrative that wanting citizens to vote. Again, listen, the premise that illegals are counted in the census, and that already contributes to House apportionments and how House seats are relegated. Now, again, if you ask me,
that's what the Constitution says.
Sure. And again, now, whether or not that ever gets challenged in court, even the highest court in the land, remains to be seen.
Well, it was. Trump tried to challenge that.
Sure. And again, my thing is the narrative is getting old. And I think especially in a year like this year, I'm sure you talk about with your students at the Rebovich Institute. Tell me where I'm wrong, or tell me where maybe I'm misguided, or maybe I'm not centered in the right direction here. What is the big deal about just proving that you're a citizen to vote in elections, Mike?
Yeah. So as I see it, there are three big issues that we have to work through if you're going to make this workable. And one of them, I think that to the House Republicans' credit, they were willing to make this change. So the first one was you were going to be required under the first iteration of the act. You were going to be required to show your birth certificate. You were going to be required to prove citizenship every time you went to the polls. Now, there's just one problem with that. If you have a passport, great. But if you don't have a passport, many of us do, I hope this isn't fear-mongering, but we don't have a reliable ID, especially in 45 states, to prove citizenship. The real ID in 45 states does not prove citizenship. There are 5 states that have required it. They've maintained the standard to prove citizenship. So I think that we realized pretty early on, or maybe belatedly, whatever, that we didn't have a viable ID that everybody has that proves citizenship. So they backed off of that. They said, you know what, just show a photo ID when you go to the polls. I thought that was reasonable, made it better, okay? The second thing I think that is a real concern, and I've heard this from Republican congressmen, is we don't want a poll tax. You can't have a poll. So if you're going to make this a requirement, this ID has to be available for free. You don't want to make a situation that people have to pay to get to the polls, right? I think that's a fair argument, right? It's not fear-mongering. Some people can afford things, some people can't, right? If you want to make it a requirement, make it available for free. And government has the ability to do that, right? Then the third problem, I think, and that's one that has not been addressed. That's not addressed in the legislation. That's not fixed at this point. So we still have this poll tax situation, right? The third situation, and this is one that becomes partisan, right? Donald Trump's made no secret. He would like to get rid of mail-in voting, right? Mail-in voting, or even registering to vote by mail, becomes much harder. How do you do that if you don't present your ID in person, right? How would you do that? How would you mail in vote? Like, the requirement in the bill is you send in a photocopy. Well, all right. I mean, look, is that too much of a barrier? I'm not here to argue that. But how secure is a photocopy? How, is that really talking about making things better than we've got it now? I don't know that we have fixed that. And that becomes a very partisan argument because, as we know that Democrats vote by mail, right? They like to vote by mail. Republicans don't. So this becomes sort of an end run about how do you get rid of mail-in votes. And I don't know if we're going to do that, then we probably ought to say we're doing that instead of a voter ID, right?
Well, a couple of things, and I'll sort of break everything down. Number one, and I hate to sound punitive when I say this, to your first point, I mean, and again, it's a family show. How the F do you not have a passport, folks? I mean, for
Oh,
God's
you
sakes.
and I do, I know, but half of the country doesn't.
It boggles my mind. Like, how do you not have a passport? That's number one. Number two, to your polling tax point, and this is where it kind of like drives me crazy about spending in Trenton. It seems like Democrats in the legislature find money or find ways. Okay, you want to spend money instead of funding some of these bullshit nonprofit organizations in New Jersey that are activist groups.
Right.
Take that money and just put it into a fund and create IDs. You could fix the problem because I mean, if you love to spend, I mean, spend it on that.
Or don't charge for a license, right?
Now to your third. Now again, you can correct us on this too. A lot of the conflict I think that exists, though, Micah, is about when it came to giving driver's licenses to illegals here in New Jersey, which passed. A lot of people are concerned that when you do that, you're enabling illegals to register to vote. And is it a mechanism that's overseen with scrutiny, Micah? Let's see. Again, I'm not trying to fearmonger myself.
No. I got you.
What I'm trying to do is raise the issue that, like, okay, well, now that this is here in New Jersey, there's a real concern for that. To your third point about vote by mail, again, I am always of the belief, Mike, if voting is that important to you, I say this all the time. If you're not going to, if Democrats in Trenton are not going to create the fund or create money or allocate funding to create IDs for everyone, where, as you said, where it doesn't cost you anything, it's government provided, right? Like, okay, presently right now, if you wish to renew your license to operate a motor vehicle, it's $24, Micah, every 4 years. If you don't operate a motor vehicle, it's, I believe, $20 every 4 years.
Okay.
All it takes is $1 a month to put under your mattress if you have to. I'm not trying to be funny here.
Yeah.
But all it takes is $1 a month to put under your mattress, and in 2 years, you have your license. If you can't even do that, I hate to break it to you folks at home, you got bigger problems than voting. I'm sorry.
I do understand, Fernando. I think that there is a philosophy here, difference of philosophy, right? One is you should be willing to put some skin in the game. And then the opposite point of view is you shouldn't have to put some skin in the game. You should be able to, if voting is a right. So look, here's my bottom line. I think, again, this is a situation where between us, we could figure this out, right? We could figure out a reasonable way. If it is the public's will to have voter ID, we could figure out a way that doesn't cost people, that doesn't hurt the ability to vote by mail, that doesn't, ask for an ID that people don't have, right? You could figure it out. The point is, do we have that infrastructure in place? Are we willing to build it so that we can have a system that is fair and isn't a burden to people?
Fair enough. Before I let you go, Mike, folks, again, if you just joined us live, it's 6 o'clock on the dot here on the East Coast. My guest tonight is the distinguished director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Again, please visit rider.edu for more information about all the great academics and programs available at Rider University. And he is their director and a guy who, again, I'm trying to grow it out as nice as he is, his nice beard, but he's Micah Rasmussen, joins us live here on Real Talk. Folks, again, like, comment, and share, ladies and gentlemen. It shows your support for fearless independent journalism here with Jersey First TV. Micah, last thing here, it's President's Day, and I kind of want to pick your brain here. And I think you'll be surprised with my answers, but favorite American president and least favorite American president.
Oh, boy. So, I mean, I'm not going to give a surprising choice, but just what Abraham Lincoln was able to pull off, was managed to do, is something that no other president has had to contend with, right? We have great pulling and shoving in this country, but nobody's had to deal with what he had to deal with. So I just am always going to give him the props. Least favorite, oh boy.
Come on, I know you want to say it. Come on.
I don't know if I do. I don't know.
No, I'm just messing with you. I'm messing with you.
Yeah. I'm not sure. There's so much to be said for Richard Nixon on balance, but you also, somebody who took the law into his hands, I think is really, it's a sacred trust, right? It's a sacred trust, and he broke that. So I don't know, probably him. Yeah.
Okay. I'll give you my choice, and you might be a little surprised here. My favorite American president is Teddy Roosevelt. I think the way Roosevelt was able to navigate our country during a very difficult time. Not that, listen, I love Abraham Lincoln. As a Republican, the father of the GOP. It's the reason we have Lincoln dinners all throughout February throughout New Jersey. As a matter of fact, Reagan dinners as well, obviously, right? But Teddy Roosevelt helped navigate this country through a very difficult period. And certainly my favorite American president. Least favorite American president, George W. Bush. And I can say this with honesty now, some call the internet, some call libraries. We can read. And, 20 years later, Micah, I think it's fair to say when we look at, and I always, it drives me crazy when I hear conservatives or Republicans talk about, whether they're never Trumpers or anti-Trumpers or whatever, to go back to the fonder days of the Republican Party and to go back to the days of George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. No. I think we've come to learn what a horrible presidency that was. We've come to learn about lying us into wars, especially Dick Cheney. I think what we've come to learn about, yes, and listen, I don't disagree about creating the DHS after what happened on September 11th, but I think what's happened since then, in the 20 years since then, I think DHS is, you want to talk about an overhaul of something or maybe an overview or a revision, I would say it's DHS. And we saw that, yes, and I get it. It was a knee-jerk reaction to what happened on September 11th in 2001, and certainly, but what we've come to learn about the Bushes, Micah, and what we've come to learn about the Cheneys, not as a conservative, that's when someone says, and I get it, that the 45th and the 47th president is not, I don't mean you, I mean this generally, may not be your cup of tea, folks. And I get it as a conservative, as a Republican, I get all that. But if the alternative, it's almost like Chris Christie kind of getting back into the game here in New Jersey saying, well, we need to get back to Republican politics the way I did it. Nah, Chris, as David would say, nah, Christopher, peace out, But I would argue that I think what we've come to learn about the Bushes and the Cheneys 20-some years later, though, Micah, is
it's a good answer.
Not a presidency I look fondly upon. I just don't. I really, really don't. And I always say this about cycles. I mean, again, your political IQ is way above mine. But I'll sort of say this. I think that everything has a cause and effect. I think 12 years of Reagan and George H.W. produced Bill Clinton. 8 years of Bill Clinton produced George W. Bush.
That's where we are. Yeah.
8 years of George W. Bush produced Barack Obama.
Right.
8 years of Barack Obama and 4 years of the auto pen produced 2 terms of Donald Trump. So I think there's a cause and effect about how voters look at administrations. And on this President's Day, I think it's important to realize that there's a cause and effect to every administration. Is that fair?
It is fair. It's absolutely fair. And it's what when you talk about it, when you recite the back and forth, it just makes you really long for somebody who can rise above it, somebody who can really just get us out of this petty back and forth, because we are in this cycle and we are stuck in this cycle. And you just want somebody who can appeal to our best. Hard to do, very hard to do, but that's what we've got to long for.
Micah, David took the high road last week, I think, when it came to, as I mentioned just right now, obviously, State Senator John Bramnick welcomed former Governor Chris Christie to his house, to a barbecue, whatever it was, a dinner. Some Republicans in New Jersey are looking at Chris Christie and John Bramnick as maybe these are the Republicans that will help the NJGOP not be a minority party in New Jersey. What are you hearing about whether or not we should revisit Chris Christie and Republican politics again in New Jersey?
Well, I don't know how much lessons we have to learn from the guy. He's an incredibly skilled politician. There's no question about that. But let's not forget how he went out. Let's not forget the approval rating. And that was not 14%, 13%, whatever it was not an accident. It was very much decidedly, he ran himself into the ground. He ran his numbers into the ground. Now, if anybody can, sort of learn from those mistakes, maybe he can. But he does not have the track record that anybody wants to emulate. I mean, 2 failed presidential runs, failed end to his governorship. I don't know that he's got the lessons. Like I said, smart guy, incredibly smart guy, but I don't know that he's got the secret sauce for sure.
Yeah, it's not 2017 anymore. Let's just say that. Michael, before I let you go, again, you're such a wealth of knowledge and information. I appreciate your time here on the program. Folks, if you're just tuning in live again, you go share the replay and watch it in its entirety after we go off the air tonight. But again, the Rebovich Institute continues to do great things, folks, at Rider University. You can visit rider.edu. And for our audience again, Micah, what can we look forward to? I know you mentioned State Senator Brian Stack will be coming to Rider University to address students in a sit down. But what else can we look forward to later this spring and summer, even maybe going into the fall, since I'm sure you have to start booking things and planning events accordingly. Right. What can we look forward to at the Rebovich Institute?
So whether it's in person or whether it's virtual, there's going to be a lot of races to sort through this year. And so we want to help people do that. I'm sure that we're going to be doing a lot of that with the Globe, debates, helping people figure it out in the general election. If
not 12 people, right? Not 12 people.
Right? Right. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see who our partners are on that. But I think you can look for the biggest questions of 2026 to be ones that we try to help voters figure out.
Micah, again, you're a wealth of information, man. Happy President's Day to you. Glad to see you're doing well. And again, glad to see you're doing great work. Folks, he is the Distinguished Director of the Rebovich Institute of New Jersey Politics over at Rider University down in Central Jersey. Yes, folks, there is Central Jersey. You can visit it at rider.edu for all your academic programs and all the great resources available from Rider University. Folks, Micah Rasmussen, the director there, joined us live tonight. Micah, God bless you, brother. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk to you again soon here on Jersey First TV.
It's always a pleasure, Fernando. It's always a great conversation. Thank you very much for having me.
I love you, bro. Have a good one. We'll talk to you again soon. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye. Folks, good stuff there with Micah Rasmussen, the director of the Rebovich Institute of New Jersey Politics over there at Rider University. And again, folks, you can check it out at rider.edu for all the great academic programs, resources, and other great things available to the student body and potential students applying to Rider University. So you definitely want to check that out, folks. A great institution of learning here in the state of New Jersey. Folks, it's 6:10 here on the East Coast. I appreciate you tuning in here. Again, folks, if you just joined us live, don't go anywhere. Like, comment, and share. It takes a few seconds to, once again, as I mentioned before, show your support for fearless, independent journalism. And that's right, folks. It's always here with Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Folks, again, it takes a few seconds. We appreciate your support here on this President's Day. And again, hope you got to enjoy a really great weekend, not just Valentine's Day, but enjoy the long weekend as everyone's back to work tomorrow. Whether you're working in education or wherever it is you're working, folks, hope you enjoyed a wonderful President's Day weekend. We got a little bit of snow, but thankfully not a lot. And hopefully, folks, warmer days are ahead. And hopefully spring is right around the corner. I don't know about you guys. I'm done with winter already. I mean, seriously, I'm done with this. So again, we appreciate you tuning in here from wherever and however you may be doing so here on the Jersey First Television Network. Folks, you know what time it is. It's time for Final Thoughts. And folks, I talk about all the time on this show, and there is no shortage of bad actors and clowns in various institutions here in New Jersey, whether it's in academia. We see it with beta males like Joe Amaditis from Woke State University over there in Montclair, or awful activists like Antoinette Miles with the New Jersey Working Families Party, or Bob Medina, who I'm sure is asleep at this hour, but sure. Okay. Or some pretty mediocre journalists like Tom Moran, who's somehow still working, Alan Steinberg, who somehow occasionally contributes a column that, if you need a cure for insomnia, you can just read Alan Steinberg, and Sleepy Owl will put you to sleep, Or other mediocre journalists or lazy journalists like Charles Stile or Matt Friedman, or insufferable activists like Amy Torres from the New Jersey Alliance of Immigrant Justice, or, pretty lazy government employees. Maria Rodriguez over there at Montclair State University, and others. Or useless public officials like Phil Cohen in Hoboken, or Ravi Bala in the 32nd Legislative District, or useless activists, again, Caleb Burrell in Jersey City, or Hetty Rosenstein, or lazy journalists like Uncle Dave, David Cruz, and Max Bizzaro at Insider NJ, or Nettie Morsi, again, useless activists over there at Make the Road, New Jersey. But folks, what really makes me chuckle is the idea that no matter how measured and composed you can be, folks, doesn't matter. No matter how mainstream or, I don't know, just very calm that you can come across, it's still not enough for a lot of progressives and far left activists, whether it's in Hudson County or New Jersey, across the country. Nothing ever makes the woke mob happy, folks. You know, the nose ring militia, the social justice clowns, the woke fools. I talk about it all the time on the show. But if I ever need a reinforcement about how insufferable these people are, look no further, folks, than an op-ed that I submitted last week to the Jersey City Times, a great local news site here in Hudson County. Again, a shout out to their editor-in-chief, Aaron Morrill, for publishing my op-ed last week. And let me just give you a perspective here. Let me just read it to you so you can see, again, if you don't have access to it or you don't have access to the paywall via the Jersey City Times, I can read it to you and you will be just surprised, number one, at how composed and measured I am. And number two, like, really? People still had a problem with it? Okay. Let me just give you a perspective here, folks. Let me just read it to you. It's not that much. It's about 500 words, so I'll go pretty quick with it. Okay. Now, the title of my editorial was "Progressives in New Jersey Virtue Signaling? ? You're kidding? ? So I wrote, coming from one of the few outspoken conservatives in Hudson County and in Garden State media, the title here isn't about clickbait. It's about pointing out the obvious. We learned a recent ICE operation apprehended illegals with felonies on their records. I'm relieved because it certainly helps diffuse much of the hysteria from many local officials who wasted no opportunity to grandstand. Some include legislators like Katie Brennan, Ravi Bala, Councilman Jake Efros in Jersey City, Joel Brooks in Jersey City, and others. As the son of immigrants, I get vilified for showing firm support for this agency. When I see how illegals have benefited here in New Jersey, I know I'm not alone when I say it makes my blood boil. For property owners like myself, I have every right to voice my displeasure in how my tax dollars are spent. A 2024 New Jersey Assembly Republicans report suggests the annual cost to state taxpayers exceeds $7.3 billion for services, which include education for all the anchor babies that are here, right? Healthcare, when it comes to our emergency rooms being overcrowded, or, for example, Medicaid dollars that come from Washington get put into a fund here in New Jersey, folks, which we all know as NJ Family Care, which allows illegals to apply for health insurance in New Jersey. So we're subsidizing healthcare for illegals. Yes, so next time, to make sure you don't get insulted by anybody, yes, illegals do not receive Medicaid dollars directly from the federal government. That's true. What they do receive is it's subsidized via NJ Family Care, which again takes money from Medicaid. And of course, public safety. Look no further than the amount of crime that has happened all throughout this country because of illegals. You know what's, and I'll read the rest of it in a minute. But folks, isn't it interesting about progressives and the far left in New Jersey? Because they're the first ones that'll sort of die on a hill about certain issues. You ever seen progressives when it comes to gun control and gun violence and everything? Their answer is, well, folks, if we have strict gun control, if it stops one unnecessary death, then it's worth it. Well, folks, put your money where your mouth is. If we're getting rid of just one violent illegal, we can live with ICE. It's that simple. And no, folks, that's not an apples and oranges comparison. That's the truth, because that always seems to be the sanctimony by many progressives on the left. Again, I just have to use gun control as an example. We see it all the time, whether it's out of touch celebrities at red carpets or activists like the ones I just showed you behind me in the collage I have. It's always like, well, if we get rid of guns, if it saves at least one life, it's worth it. Well, guess what, folks? If ICE gets rid of at least one criminal legal, it's worth it too. So put your money where your mouth is and stop being full of shit, as I point out to a lot of people online. But let's continue. There's also analysis from the Federation for American Immigration Reform, which also quantifies the cost around $5.3 billion annually. Now, this is unacceptable. This is what progressives will never talk about because it's easier to virtue signal and grandstand. How does that help me as a taxpayer? It doesn't. This is what many on the left, both throughout the state and locally, fail to comprehend. So when I see ICE operations like the one this past weekend in Hoboken and Jersey City, I'm fine with it. However, there's a reality that many across the aisle fail to grasp. Both parties, for decades, have dropped the ball about comprehensive immigration reform. I seriously doubt we will ever see a concerted effort with tangible results in my lifetime. Now, the 46th president failed to secure our borders, and we saw the cost with our very own eyes. The 47th president has secured the border, and by the way, has anyone noticed the drop in crime in many cities throughout this country? It's no coincidence. There's a reason independent media continues to thrive because it's journalists like me that are talking about this consistently. So whether you like me or not, it's irrelevant. I'm here to discuss these topics in a way that establishment media has failed to do, right? Over the years, useless people like Tom Moran, Ron Zelinger, Alan Steinberg, David Cruz, Max Pizarro. Folks, these have all been lazy mother effers that are useless. They're worthless in every sense of the word. And I don't have a problem saying that out loud because I can. Okay? I'm the only journalist, that's right, journalist, that's been talking about this issue consistently. Not playing just some narrative, not carrying buckets of water for some bullshit narrative or ideology. No, folks, I've been talking about this with integrity. And I know that the word integrity, that's a big word for a lot of these garbage Mickey Mouse journalists I just mentioned. Integrity, that's a big word for a lot of you idiots. But here on this show, we have it. I can't speak for all you guys, but here on this show, we have integrity. Let's continue. Let me just get back to here. Okay, 1 second. Okay. I'm here to discuss now. Those dinosaurs continue to let us down by not discussing illegal immigration in good faith. I'm simply the media. That's right. Enforcing federal law shouldn't be this polarizing, but it is. So when I see illegals with serious felonies being taken into custody, you should be rejoicing, not clutching your pearls. For some, that's their standard modus operandi, but not for me. And by the way, there's a lot, and I'll get to them in a minute. And there's a lot of locals, whether it's in Hudson County, specifically Jersey City or wherever, that talk about, oh, no one's illegal on stolen land. Can you stop the bullshit? Because you look like an effing moron saying that and putting it into writing. Okay? Here's a history lesson because I've taught world history alongside U.S. history and American government. Folks, do you think in the 1200s and 1300s in Northern Europe, do you think when Vikings were moving across Northern Europe and settling in certain regions, do you think the Vikings sat around a table and talked with other tribes and said, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to separate this land. You get this piece and you get that piece. No, folks, they slaughtered each other because that's what humans have done. It's called migration. It's called taking over land. Do you think African tribes throughout the continent of Africa sat around a table or in their huts or wherever and said, oh, we're going to differentiate what land belongs to you here and which one belongs to you there? No, folks, they battled it out and whoever won got the land. It's as simple as that. Here in the Americas, whether all the way as far south as Argentina to all the way up in Canada, what was going on? Indigenous people gather around, and you think that they gathered around and said, well, I think we can separate this land fairly and equitably. No, folks, they slaughtered each other. You go to battle, whoever wins gets the land. It's as simple as that, folks. So that's why, and I'll show some of the idiots in a minute, but this is why you sound so stupid. Saying, oh, no one's illegal on stolen land. Really? Did you expect people to just sit around and, draw a map out and say, oh, this land's yours, this land? No, folks. It's happened since the beginning of human history. To the winner go the spoils. You fight in a battle, you fight in a war. Guess what? You get that land. Okay, it's as simple as that. But you have these progressives and these folks. There's nothing more toxic in our political culture than white liberal women. That is a fact. And I see it here in Hudson County. The usual stroller moms, the cat ladies, all the obese feminists, all the nose ring militia. It's the same women and the same beta males that are either A, married to them, or B, out there with signs that convey these bullshit narratives. Let me finish up what I wrote here. I'm here to tell you the truth, and sometimes it isn't easy to hear. But what's the alternative? Virtue signal? ? We've seen enough of it in our institutions, such as academia, activism, and the establishment media. Should ICE have more extensive training than just 47 days? Absolutely. Should they have body cams like other law enforcement do? Certainly. Do they deserve to be harassed by residents who have been deputized into obnoxious radicals by the institutions I just named right now? Come on. You know the answer. If you want to weaponize some slogan for clicks online to vilify ICE, go for it. But you're not fooling anybody. Folks, that is as measured an op-ed as you can get from me. And by the way, you're welcome to the Jersey City Times, because I believe that post by them highlighting this editorial is perhaps the biggest engagement they've had in quite some time. So you're welcome. And I don't mean that in a condescending way, but I mean it in sort of a chuckling way. But you should have seen the comment section from the usual Karens and the same toxic liberal white women in Jersey City and Hudson County. And folks said there was no shortage of them. No shortage of them last week. You can see it for yourself. Whether it's, let's say, Rebecca Robinson Overholt. Folks, look at this woman's page and you can see, again, if there's anyone that exemplifies a cat lady, it's this insufferable woman. Right? Who gets triggered by, oh my God, the use of language of illegals. Folks, if you're here illegal, you're illegal. But Karens like Rebecca, that goes in one ear and out the other. What else is there? And others who, again, were very judicious and very cavalier with their shots at my expense. And I'm happy to remind them. For example, Irene Barnaby in Jersey City, super hot MILF. Believe me, I never kick her out of bed. But I've talked to her enough times at event mixers, and let's be honest, this is a woman who can't hold her liquor at all, who's a lush. So if you know Irene and have interacted with her the way I have on more than one occasion, I can speak intelligently because I have a sample size where I know she's a drunk hot mess. But when you read her comments, she just reminds you, again, of the typical toxic liberal white woman. Okay? As well as other useless people like Christopher Halloran in Hoboken. Folks, this guy's like 2 steps short of a retard here. But to take shots at me online, I mean, let's be honest. This is a guy who has seen me at the Hoboken Arts and Crafts Festival, and I know he's seen me because I've seen him. You ever think he's going to have that same energy to come up to me and say, of course not. He's a bitch. But that's who Christopher Halloran has become. As well as others, folks. Colin DeVries, another beta male in Jersey City and Hudson County. Dave Lambert, another beta male, opining. Here's a good one, Alex Trillo. Folks, if you ever see this guy, this is the least masculine person I've ever seen. And that's saying a lot because I come across a lot of very unmasculine men. And believe me, it's unsettling. Okay? This is a guy who I guarantee paints his fingernails. I could almost bet my money on it. Okay? The least masculine person I think you could ever imagine. Or one of the ones I can imagine. Who has no problem, somehow vilifying people for having a different opinion. And again, shout out to the Jersey City Times, where people were losing their minds and saying, well, the Jersey City Times is some sort of conservative echo chamber. Bullshit. Folks, if you ever read the Jersey City Times, they're a pretty fair and balanced news site. They publish editorials from all points of view. But you see, folks, that's the problem with progressives like Este Come Mierda, Alex Trillo, and others. See, they preach tolerance. No, they're tolerant of what they want to hear. That's what makes them insufferable, and it makes them really unreliable. People like this, the ones I just mentioned as well. Let me see who else. Deborah Devi, another useless musician with political opinions. Okay, sure. Whatever floats your boat, honey. Okay. But it's these type of people that prompted the Hudson County Chronicles to, again, and let me just give you full disclosure, Bruce Austin, the editor of the Hudson County Chronicles, doesn't like Aaron Morrill or the Jersey City Times. So in fairness, let's put that out there. But what was interesting is after he read my op-ed, which again was very measured and composed, okay, he came out with his own editorial, said the Uribe op-ed exposed the bias and privilege of the Jersey City Times and its readers. Let me just give you a perspective here about why that was interesting. And I'll sort of give you, it was a pretty good editorial. It was definitely more than 500 words from Bruce Austin. But I'll just give you a perspective about why it's not, again, shout out to Bruce. He had no reason to publish this and come to my aid. I mean, I get vilified by progressives and the far left and all the woke fools and the nose ring militia and all the cat ladies and Karens in Hudson County on a regular basis. That's fine. I don't mind. I can stick up for myself. But shout out to Bruce for kind of sticking up for me when, quite frankly, folks, this was the least polarizing op-ed I could have ever hoped to publish. Right? But let's sort of go with this here, okay? And let's sort of give you a perspective here about why it was pretty interesting. So let's read what he wrote, and I'll just give you the basics here, which I thought, again, folks, I thought it was pretty measured even by Bruce's standards, where Bruce can be very, very emphatic and Bruce can be very, very outspoken as much as myself when it comes to, sharing opinions and editorials the way that I do on this program and on my media brand overall. Let's just sort of go to this one right here, and I'll just sort of pull it up here for you, folks, and just bear with me. Again, great. If you don't follow the Hudson County Chronicles on Facebook, folks, check it out. It's worth reading. Great content, and it's very organic traffic, too. I mean, Bruce has a lot of traffic to brag about. I mean, I think he had more than 1 million organic views in 2025. So no surprise there, folks. He does great work. He has a pulse of what's going on in Jersey City, and this is a guy who I think, quite frankly, gets a lot right in Jersey City about what's going on. So he decides to write, one thing about the Hudson County Chronicles is this. We are comfortable being exactly who we are. We don't pretend to be neutral. We don't hide behind journalistic walls of self-cover. We don't borrow credibility from outlets that confuse access with integrity. Our political content is from the views of political operatives who actually consume it via a network of sources and leaks. Controversial, yes, sometimes abrasive, and not pretending to be the standard for all Jersey City media. Now, let me say this plainly. I don't pledge my soul to any political party. I always describe myself as a demo nonpartisan crack. I lean Democrat most often, and I agree with Republicans on certain economic policies, but I reserve the right to agree, disagree, evolve, and dissent without seeking permission from a party apparatus or from followers or readers to accommodate their views. Of course, he talked about his specific dislike for the Jersey Times, but we'll get to where it involves me. And I give a lot of credit. He didn't have to do this, but this is interesting. So he writes, that's not journalism. It's racialized instinct dressed up as professionalism. Now, fast forward to today. The same far-left progressive audience that once attacked the Hudson County Chronicles for publishing an op-ed by Fernando Uribe is now losing its mind because the Jersey Times itself ran an ICE op-ed by Fernando Uribe, who is the face of conservative journalism in Hudson County. The comment section is chaos on the Jersey Times Facebook page. Accusations that the outlet supports the views. That's not true. As I said to you, they publish op-eds from all points of view. Outrage that a conservative perspective was allowed space demands for ideological purity. Here's the truth. If the Jersey Times truly practiced nonpartisan journalism, this wouldn't be a controversy. Publish it, contextualize it, move on. But that's not the relationship they built with their readers. For years, the Jersey Times positioned itself as a progressive-only platform while wearing the disguise of neutrality. Advocacy framed as reporting, preference presented as principle, And now their own audience is reacting because the unspoken contract was broken. This space is supposed to be ours, only our views, only our framing. What makes this moment matter to me is the hypocrisy. These are the same readers who called the Hudson County Chronicle's trash last summer for publishing Uribe's op-ed around the canceled mayor's debate at 626. The same writer, same voice, different platform. The difference wasn't content. It was control. As a Black political operative, I recognize this dynamic immediately. Progressive spaces that tolerate diversity until it challenges power. Media platforms that preach equity while practicing selective scrutiny. Covert racism that never shouts, but always knows exactly where to aim. Well, again, folks, you can read the rest of it, but you get the picture here. Nothing is ever going to make progressives in Hudson County or New Jersey ever happy. They're not. Because when I think of progressives in Jersey City, whether it's Rebecca, Irene, and the rest of these idiots like Christopher Halloran and all that, folks, it reminds me that their existence pretty useless. But their existence also serves to remind us that, quite frankly, while there are intellectually honest people like myself on social media platforms, they're also clowns. We're not the same. So when I think of them, this comes to mind. I mean, folks, really, that's the best way to summarize progressives in Hudson County and all throughout New Jersey. Even as measured as you can be, even as composed as I was, it's still never enough. The typical Karens and cat ladies and feminists and the nose ring militia and the social justice cons and the woke fools. Folks, nothing is ever going to make these miserable effing people happy. Because if you don't subscribe to their bullshit, well, then you're the enemy. And that's pretty tribal. And that's not who I am. But that's who these people are. We should realize that as soon as possible. And those are my final thoughts. Folks, a special comment here. And, I like to sort of browse the news feed, as they say, throughout, social media leading up to the show. And I always like to sort of look at, quite frankly, who is, I would say probably not serving a purpose, But when I think of useless in New Jersey media or lack thereof, because God knows when was the last time you ever published a column, right? I think of Jay Lassiter. And I know it's hard. I know that you may not recognize Jay Lassiter because he has something in his mouth. But then again, when doesn't Jay Lassiter have something in his mouth? Again, that's probably a conversation for a different day. But it's pretty rich to read. Someone screenshot this stupidity to me and said, apparently little JJ published today on Twitter 2 things. Number 1, I'm really glad Phil Murphy is gone. Number 2, Mikey Sherrill has been a surprisingly refreshing cultural and political reset here in New Jersey. Okay, what exactly is the reset here, Jay? Just full-blown Trump derangement syndrome? Are we even addressing affordability? Are we addressing property taxes? I know you don't pay any because you don't do shit. You just live off your husband's money. But for the rest of us that work, adults that work, they don't just stay at home all day and put things in their mouth like bongs and smoke weed all day. For responsible adults that live in the real world, affordability matters to us. And again, I have to, I love the comment section. And I'm glad that people call out this idiot because he's pretty useless, right? I love the one guy. Do you feel the same when you pay your electricity bill or property taxes? And of course, people, look at this and obviously kind of makes it laugh, right? Just go through the comment section. It's pretty funny. But again, folks, when you think about common sense politics, and you think about talking about politics in a reasonable and rational way, yes, folks, it's possible. But unfortunately, those that also occupy the echo chamber are idiots like Jay Lassiter. who really serve no purpose in New Jersey media. I can't remember the last time he wrote a column. And B, was it even something of substance? If it's not crying about HIV and whatever other bullshit, I mean, I don't care. Like, I really don't care. Okay? I really don't. But what makes Jay insufferable are his followers, or people that sort of blindly follow him and just think that Jay produces some essence of political intellect, and he doesn't. So again, folks, when we think about useless people in our echo chamber or in our social media platforms, stay clear of this guy. Because again, if you want to lose brain cells or just sort of scratch your head and think like, what's this guy talking about? How's New Jersey more affordable, Jay? Like, I get it. All you care about is weed and the 11 cats you have in your house. I get it. It's probably the only pussy that could stand to be near you. I can't imagine any other pussy wanting to be around you. But here in New Jersey, we have serious problems, and we need serious people to solve them. When I think about serious people, I never think about Jay Lassiter. So yeah, folks, while there's intellectually honest people like Fernando Uribe, with integrity, integrity, unfortunately, I have to share the same space with idiots like Jay Lassiter. It's tragic, though. So if you can avoid and steer clear of Jay Lassiter, do so. Trust me, you'll thank me later. And that's my special comment. Folks, that's our show for this week. And once again, I do want to thank, and of course, by the way, happy President's Day to everybody. Well, not to everybody. Not everybody gets to celebrate President's Day. So yes, happy President's Day. Hope you get to enjoy it and honor your favorite American president in whichever way you want to. But again, it's a great President's Day for some people, not so much for others. Once again, folks, I want to thank the director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey politics here in New Jersey, Micah Rasmussen, for his excellent conversation today. Folks, over an hour with him on a plethora of different things here in New Jersey politics and academia and much more. Folks, again, if you haven't just tuned in right now, share the episode, folks. It goes a long way in showing your support for fearless, independent journalism right here with Jersey First TV. Of course, make sure you like us on Facebook. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and X, and also subscribe to us on YouTube, and also download our great content on Spotify or SoundCloud. And always remember, folks, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it is always real talk right here on the Jersey First Television Network. That's right, folks. It is me, the generational talent in Garden State Media, and certainly, folks, your leader for trustworthy opinion journalism here in the Garden State. It's Fernando Uribe. Folks, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy all the great Lincoln dinners and Reagan Day dinners throughout the rest of February, and I'll see you next week here, folks. Again, on Monday Nights Live for what I would argue is the best analysis and commentary about everything going on in New Jersey politics and more. That's right, folks. It's real talk right here with Fernando Uribe on Jersey First TV. Take care of yourselves. Please party responsibly. And always remember, stay classy, everyone.